Hi there, I'm here with Chris Stapleton of Simiosys today. Hi Chris, how are you?
Hi, how you doing? Good.
Great to have you.
Good to be here.
So Chris is an experienced producer and designer for premier entertainment, education, and marketing venues like Disney, MGM, and Sanrio, and a handful of others you've probably heard of. His goal is to help shape the next generation of learning as a venture catalyst. So Chris, can you tell us first off, what is a venture catalyst?
Yes, a venture catalyst is a take on the position venture capitalist. And what I found is now in the creative economy, all decisions shouldn't really be made from a, a venture catalyst position, which seems to happen with innovation. True innovation really happens, you have to monetize a value of the creative value of a new product or innovation. So as a creative venture catalyst, I work with first the idea and push that through. And money is just a logistics, and it isn't the goal or the end, which destroys a lot of very creative projects.
Absolutely. I can definitely see that, especially in the startup sector, for instance. So about your background a little bit. How has, I know you have an MFA, how has that kind of shaped the work that you do now?
Well, it shapes everything I do. In fact, everybody who I work with on my team is an artist at one way or the other. Not just an artist, or isn't focused on an artist. Like I have a colleague in Canada that runs a laboratory on the science of imagination, and he's first a cognitive scientist, but he's also an artist. And so I work with a lot of people that are crossing over a lot of these different disciplines. And so art is kind of core of everything that we do in creative innovation, in media. Everything isn't a matter of a creative product. And so a lot of people you'll see that say, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not artistic. In reality, everybody is. And I need to pull that out from everybody. And by doing that, I deal with a very unpredictable, very chaotic, very messy job of innovation in a very much more appealing and humanistic way, with a lot of good results, I believe. And so Daniel Pink, that wrote the book A Whole New Mind, is quoted as saying, the MFA is the new MBA. Only because what can be done by a computer or a third world country is going to be done by computers in the future. And what's going to be valued in the future is what can't be done by a computer. And that is creative vision, problem solving, looking at disparate data and finding links and patterns and finding new ideas on how we work. And that is really essential. And so with my MFA, I've been able to take it to emergency rooms in Munich. I've been taking it to battleground training areas in Benning, Georgia. I've been being able to take it into therapeutic training, evaluation, and traumatic brain injury treatment in Orlando. I've been able to take it to Tokyo and work on different, visualization tools or theme parks around the world. And so what's interesting is that for the first time, an MFA means so much more to every industry than it ever has, because when I got it, there wasn't computers, and it was this little side position that you never got money for. And my father was always wondering, how are you going to make money off of fine arts training? And my first year out of college, I made as much as he did his last year in his career. So, I got into art, computers, and fine art just at the right time.
hmm So how is introducing that creative element to experiences, for instance, you mentioned kind of the ER and some of the more interesting projects that you've worked on, how is introducing that creative element bringing a more human aspect to the experiences that you guys are helping to create?
Well, the essence of humanity is imagination and creativity. That's who we are. That's what distinguishes us as being human and being able to do the amazing things we are. So when you take a look at that and you look at the creative field of designing experiences, you pretty much cover what value you bring to the earth as humans. And so the experience of a surgeon, a soldier, a student, a teacher, they're all so complex, nuanced, and they deal with the physical world with all senses, all dimensions, all directions, in all realities now. And the realities are the physical reality, obviously, and also the virtuality that's embedded and ubiquitous in all of our worlds. But also there's an area that I call the imaginality. This is the mental models that we deal with, and everything's ruled by that perspective. And everything else is an illusion or a memory or, hearsay. And that's really, when you start working with that, that's the area that I specialize in. And so a surgeon needs a mental model of all the history of surgery based upon the conditions that he can evaluate in front of him and project with his imagination all the possible variations that could come of any one of his actions. And he's making these decisions in a split second. And that's a huge amount of processing. And those people who work with life and death situations have such a heightened level of experience. But it relates exactly to what I used to do in designing thrill rides. Is how can I take people to the edge of death, or the feeling of the edge of death, and feel completely safe? And that's what a surgeon's doing, really. And a lot of research that I've gotten into since I've moved on from using entertainment as a means versus an end is realize that a lot of cognitive research shows that when you use all senses, you increase your working memory by 3 times, which means that the screens that we're working on, just the focal perception that we're working with, is just really utilizing 1/3 of our capabilities. And we're all basically working in a world that we're all handicapped. We're totally handicapped. We're not using our full senses, our full capabilities, our full working memory, because our interfaces with the world are so limited within like 2 senses and the focal perception. In reality, the world is so much more complex, but we can work with it in a far more intuitive way.
Mm-hmm. And so
These answers are too long.
no, not at all. It's perfect. I'm actually curious. So I read a little about how you were working with organizations to do virtual collaboratories.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Any which way it can. What we realized is, over a series of period of really trying to stimulate innovation, is that people were thinking of things in corporations and civic communities and the public and universities that were great ideas that, when applied, just failed totally. But by the time they were applied, so much money was invested, they kept on trying to make it work. And one of the things I realized, and this is working in Munich actually, with what they call the Computer Aided Medical Procedure Lab, CAMP, at the Technical University of Munich, where I was a visiting professor, and we were looking at ways to better innovate. And one of the things that we did is to put the research laboratory of mixed reality adjacent to the polytrauma emergency room, so that people were coming in with emergency treatment out of helicopters on a daily basis, while computer scientists were on the other side of the wall creating new ways of visualization of medical procedures. And this conversation is that you could never get into the life of a surgeon and talk to him unless it's on his break, or if it's, a lot of times the surgeons would come in and say, we got a huge, helicopter. It's like, when you ever see the movie MASH, when all the medical, bodies came on in helicopters. Well, this is what this was, but in the middle of Munich. And we were able to follow the surgeons, and they were able to tell about what, they were able to think out loud and say, what's going right, what's going wrong. And we could be able to see so much in Germany that you could never see in the United States because of liabilities, insurance, all this other crap that the U.S. deals with. Because in Germany, they saw the hospital also as a university, as a way to really kind of advance. And surgeons had to publish and research, and they were so curious about how to improve it. And so that's one of the things that we were able to do, is not only have this day-to-day conversation for those people who really need the innovation, but we had an immediate testing or play testing of technology and things that we would think would be brilliant, that never been done before, that they would love, they hate it. And things that we just did very, incidental, it was like it changed their life. And so we can't predict that. And so what I realized is that we need to bring in the research into where the people are using it. And
Mhm.
so this summer, we're going to create a real-world laboratory in the Aphasia House, which is a therapy, training, and research center for aphasics, which is a loss of speech and communication due to traumatic brain injury, a stroke, or a gunshot, like Gabby Gifford had. And they have to learn how to speak all over again because there's certain things that they can't work with certain words the way the brain has been injured. And the
Mhm.
brain doesn't heal like all the other parts of the body. So the brain has to find new ways. And so we're going to set up a real-world laboratory in our aphasia house. And the therapy is usually very scientific and analytic. And what we're trying to do is find a way story, game, and play can come in an experiential way to loosen up and bring stories from within the clients that they have. And we already done a little play testing and realized that this is going to be a breakthrough. It's going to revolutionize aphasic therapy. And what's interesting is that a lot of this work in initial exploratory isn't funded by anyone. No one's getting paid. We just kind of say, here's a good idea. Let's dig in, let's play around, let's see what's there. And when we find something and we find some data, that's the kernel that then can start attracting the funding, the research, the collaborations. And so what's really critical is bringing civic, commercial, and academic entities together. The academic brings this whole body of work and research and grounded theories to grab the knowledge that's happened all up to this point, and really great thinkers. You have the commercial sector that knows how to get things done very efficiently, very compellingly, and you have the civic organizations that are dealing with problems. That's where their funding is for, is to solve problems in society. You bring those together. But in the last 20 years of me trying to bring those together and almost killing myself, I realized that that's almost impossible because you can't change those institutions. There's a quote out there that that is a good description. It's saying we're dealing with primordial emotions, with medieval institutions, with godlike technology, and this is far too dangerous to kind of whittle around with. So what I'm trying to do with the real world laboratory is to create an entity that's a civic entity, a commercial entity, and an academic entity together but separate, but born to collaborate. And that's our real-world laboratory. And one of the things that we're going to be exploring is how does open innovation really kind of help that process and stimulate that farther. Because we're in this age of humanity that has never been seen before. I mean, a lot of people see, oh, here's another trend, but you just don't realize that we're on the cusp of an amazing change in society and humanity. That the fact that this virtuality, these worlds of imagination, both in our heads and on media, is mixing with our physical reality and being ubiquitous in all things that we do. It would be amazing to see that life looks the way it does in 20 years from now. And I don't think a lot of people see it. And that's one of the exciting things. I went from entertainment into research and into innovation, is to really kind of be a part of that forge that forges a whole new life for us, because we really are not reaching our potential in existing systems. But we're just now beginning with the internet, with crowdsourcing, with all these things, beginning to see potential.
Mm-hmm. So going back to one of your points, you mentioned that you're at a really good spot to bring together the commercial and the civic and the educational components
Academic.
of things. And you also mentioned healthcare and education as two traditionally heavier organizational type foundations, I guess, or institutions that typically just cannot make these kinds of changes very swiftly. It often takes a really long time. And what do you think that the biggest challenge is in introducing innovation, and why do you think it's such a slow process for those types of institutions?
Well, it's the institutions themselves. They're really based on medieval models, especially academia. It's just incredible. And the commercial industries are really based upon a very myopic short term. And the fact that they can't work together really means that they can't bridge what's necessary to make all those connections. And so really, the change that we're going to see right now is a constant state of radical innovation. What you may call disruptive innovation, but I hate that term because disruptive is not innovation. Innovation is something that changes our lives, and we adopt, you know, immediately. We want to. It's like the iPhone. That's a great innovation. It's like I couldn't wait to get a hold of one. It took very little to figure it out, and boom. It was only disruptive for Nokia and BlackBerry and you know, all these other archaic technologies that didn't get it, and that they were behind. And it's disruptive for a lot of commercial companies that were making predictions on the past as far as how they'll make money in the future. And they totally lost out. And it was disruptive to them, but that's just kind of, what do they call it in war? Casualties. The issue is that we, in our operational excellence, is the #1 obstacle for innovation. And you'll read more about this in a book called Creative Destruction. But we have, up until the 21st century, built organizations based upon operational excellence, which means that we need to maximize resources, make the highest level of productivity, do all these numbers that really avoided any level of creativity, imagination, or change. And right now we're in a state of constant radical innovation, which means that radical innovation versus sustaining innovations changes the way we do things. So once we change the technology, we change the technique, we change the method in the whole product life cycle and value chain, and we have to rethink of all of those all at once. We have to look at what is the technical, the creative, the financial, the operational, the ethical, all those things all at once. And so when you take a look at the university, it's a perfect institution that covers all those disciplines, but in the universities they don't talk together. I don't know why. And you have an institution that can think farther than their next quarterly report. But they don't. I don't know why. Maybe it's tenure. The thing is that they're a perfect environment to help innovation, but they're the worst prepared for innovation or drive innovation or to stimulate innovation. They are so far behind, except for some of the major universities that you hear about in the news. And that's why you hear about them in the news. They have a little bit of process. But most colleges, mid-level, mid-ranked, lower colleges, they are a factory of money and degrees that are accepting anybody, producing nobody, and not really advancing it. And I'm being very critical, and I apologize. I shouldn't be negative.
I feel like you're sharing the lineup with Perry Hewitt from Harvard University, actually.
Oh well, he's top of the line. Okay, so I'm not talking about Harvard, Yale, NYU, or UW, or it's a whole different world. Sure. I mean, when you're in a university that has an endowment that could give tuition for free to all their students and still make money, it's a nice place. But when you're working with a state university or community college where you're getting money for butts and seats and you're getting a throughput, like I run a theme park, you have to follow up where the value is and where the research is, and we have to rethink that model. And I think that Harvard itself, you'll see, in any of the big institutions, Stanford, they're going and remodeling, reshaping who they are and what they're doing with the open innovation, massively online classes. They have a global franchises that they're doing around the world. They're just, they are innovating, which is good. Otherwise, they'll die. But that's only one part of the equation. The commercial aspect of saying what's going to make money. The corporations are running off of 20th century methodologies that are going from this operational excellence. And so most radical innovation is done by small business, and most sustaining innovation is done by big businesses. Now, the big businesses have the money to do radical innovation, and now that we're in a state of constant radical innovation, if they don't, they will die. Back in the 90s, Kodak and IBM were facing bankruptcy. At the same time, Microsoft and Apple were dominating the marketplace. These garage tech, companies. And you can take a look at, the last 10 years. Look at Facebook, Instagram, and all these different other kind of companies that are being bought out by Facebook that's came out of nowhere. And they didn't come out of nowhere. They just were able to be free to grow on their own. And that's one of the things that the internet is happening. It's changing completely a consumer-driven marketplace and not an industry-driven marketplace. And that changes everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Absolutely.
that's where you hear less about venture capitalists. I mean, they're out there, but they're less about driving innovation. They're more about, making the decisions that will make money for the stakeholders. And it's hard to make long-term decisions in that respect. And so one of the things I've been looking at is research on innovation and how we innovate in our daily lives and how individuals can input innovation. And most of us get the idea of what innovation all wrong. They think it's just novel and creativity and cool, neat, witty things. But it has a very specific definition. Invention is creating new and novel process, products, and ideas and concepts. Innovation is the adoption of those inventions. And that adoption process is about experience. So you can invent any product you want. Let's say the Apple Newton. Doesn't mean people are going to buy it. The thing is that you need to understand a product experience to understand how it's going to be adopted and how it's going to innovate. And most inventors don't. And that's one of the things that we do with developing what we call an innovation play tank, is that we want an environment that can not only find a laboratory off the street that inventors can come to, makers, to really kind of test their experiments on real people and get this dialogue, this feedback, like we had with surgeons in Munich, but with the daily public. But it also allows the public to see and to understand their role in innovation. It's the consumer is the most important team member in innovation. Much like the surgeons, when I asked surgeons, who's the most important person on your team? They said the patient. You know why? Because it's the patient that heals. The doctors don't. They help healing, but they help the patient heal. And it's the miraculous aspect of the body that's doing that. And so we focus too much on the industry, too much on the discipline, too much on these things that need changing and rethinking, and that's what innovation is a process of. And the difficulty of innovation is that we haven't quite figured out that innovation is everybody's job. Everybody that deals or touches or influences that potential innovation has their role that they need to help stimulate innovation. We think that there's the Steve Jobs are being born each and day, and they will bring us the innovations like Moses from the mount with the tablets. I mean, that's the myth. The reality is, and you break down what Steve Jobs did consistently and repeatably and systematically, you'll see it's broken down into basic kind of stages of technology readiness level that NASA and the DoD uses. But the thing is that he's worked out understanding where his niche is and his process of cherry picking these key areas and getting it to the most difficult stage, and that's the innovation stage. Mm-hmm. And that comes into three different areas of validation. One is, does it work? And usually once inventors say, oh yeah, it works, we'll put it out in the marketplace, it's going to fail. Because just because it works doesn't mean it solves a problem. So that's the second question, which is a human question. You say, but does it solve a problem? Yeah, it works, but they won't buy it unless it solves a problem. But then you can create it, solve a problem. The third question in innovation and validation is, does it fit in? Does it fit into my life? How easy can I adopt it? How easy does it make it my life and advance it? And because now the industry is consumer-driven, you can't just market an innovation to death or to life. The reality is it has to work in the field, and everyone knows it as soon as it hits. And that's one of the things that needs more and more aspects of understanding what that product experience is. And that's one of the things that I look into, is what value does a product, does a marketing, does a company, does a experiential marketing, or when I look at brand experience, that brand experience is not only for your customers, it's for your employees, it's for how your product's being produced. And if not everyone in that process understands their role on how to make innovation better, innovation won't happen because it has too many points of failure. And that's one of the things that Apple did really well, is that they got their users groups in well organized, they got their employees gone, they got, they figured out how to monetize creativity, monetize experience, monetize communication, monetize all of these very intangible assets. And that's what VCs don't do. Are you still here? Waiting for people to join this video call? I guess me. Are you there?
Where we left off a little bit on brand experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think are some of the main factors that are driving, you talked a lot about innovation and disruptive experiences, but what do you think are really some of the top factors in brands that are creating more meaningful brand experiences right now?
Yeah, uh, that's a great question. And I can go about it in many different ways, depending upon where that brand experience is being applied, whether it's through the marketing or whether it's through, productivity, or whether it's through research, or whether it's through just looking at a company's own vision and place in the market. So the key things, one of the very important things is I apply some assessments to valuation, and it's very similar to going to a cocktail party on a brand experience. And that approach is basically, when you go to a cocktail party, like when you go to a brand and you want that experience, you ask a few questions to yourself. When you arrive at the party, do they realize I'm there? Does the host know that I'm at their party? I mean, am I recognized? That's very important. This in second part of the cocktail party is to say, well, do I matter? I mean, yeah, I'm here. Oh yeah, come on in, have some drinks. I mean, I want to know that, oh, it's Chris. Hey, I want to introduce you to someone. Is it really, the fact, do I matter, is very important in that cocktail party. Same with the brand. Whether it's an employee, whether it's a customer, whether it's an investor, those are all kind of key critical assessments. And the third one is, do I care? I mean, it could be, yeah, I matter. Yeah, they recognize me, but there's a bunch of boring people in this place, and there's, what's the value here? What am I taking away from me? How does it change me? And so for innovation, I think it's really what value do you bring that can transform people's lives? I mean, and that really is, and one of the things that I've been working with in education and cognitive performance and human performance is this thing I call interplay. And it's the interplay of story, play, and game, which we're hardwired for. And what we've been doing is breaking down what interactive entertainment is and how it's so effective in doing what it does, and being able to work with it at entertainment as a means versus an end. And so story ask this one very important question of why should I care? If you can't answer that question, that's the main story question that storytellers use. Game play designers, the question they answer is, how can I participate? What do I do? You know, how can I, you know, where's your invitation for me to participate? And then games are about how to escalate. How does it work? How can you build upon that and escalate that level of engagement with repeat play and story and participation immersion? That's basically what game mechanics are about. And through that, we break those things down. Story is about people, places, and events. Play is about cause, effect, and consequence. Game is about goals, rules, and tools. And these are all break down in heuristic aspects that we haven't really looked at in combination with each other. And so most of the entertainment industry, which was a problem with the industry, is like the story industry is in Hollywood, the game industry is in the Bay Area, and the toy industry is probably somewhere in the Twin Cities or somewhere. And the issue is that they don't work together. And in fact, they're integral together, but very separate. And when we go into this whole new area of video games, role-playing games, in these areas, we see more and more how they're related. And so what I've been doing is looking at breaking down interactive entertainment down to how we're hardwired for it, and working with instructional designers and looking at the grounded theory of learning. And we're looking at the base foundation is that they are the same. They couple exactly.
Sure.
And similar to art and science is that, you know, everyone's talking about how they bring them together, and I want to meet the guy who separated them in the first place, because they just weren't supposed to be separated. And this is how we couple those together. So this whole interplay theory in learning, it's also a process for innovation. Also, it's a way to break down somebody's company to understand, well, what is it that the stories they're telling? How do they want to transform? Because mainly the story characters are characters, great characters transform within the story based upon the context and events. And you can basically break down a fabulous brand experience by a way we create interactive entertainment, and have that really purposeful, meaningful, something that people identify with their whole life. And working with mega theme parks, one of the things I realized is that the smallest moment can make the biggest memory. And so you can't get down to that smallest moment without the bigger context. And so a lot of people just don't think it through to that level. And so I've been accused for thinking too much, but I like that. But once you do the thinking, and once you bring it together, you can get very complex ideas conveyed in a very intuitive fashion that's very meaningful to people. And you don't have to oversimplify, over bombard people with things that they've already heard. And right now the marketplace doesn't want to be marketed to, doesn't want to be, they want value, they want a relationship, they want a say in where it's going, and in participation in what that long-term relationship is. So what's interesting in the book Creative Destruction, they watched the S&P companies, and successful companies' lifespan has been shrinking because we don't know how to repeat innovation.
Absolutely.
And yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so essentially, if we don't learn how to repeat and systemize innovation, all these successful corporations die immediately. And so there's no longer the killer app that's going to save anybody. You have to have one after the other after the other.
Sure. I was just going to say, I think that a lot of the industries that you've touched on here, I mean, you've kind of spanned a number of different things, and I think that there's a way to glean inspiration across all of them, and I think that attendees will certainly have a lot of things to take away from your talk, especially relating to their own brand experience.
Well, it's interesting because I've been invited into so many different areas I never thought I'd be working in, from hospitals to training centers to museums to schools to you know, and so I don't, you know, and when I look at them and find their essence, is that experience is so important to them, and it really hasn't been thought through in any one of their aspects. And if it was, it would make a transformative meaning to them. And that's
Absolutely.
kind of what I try to do.
Definitely. So I'm curious, Chris, with you coming out to Portland in October, what are you looking forward to the most about the conference?
Well, how can you resist a conference called Delight? I think that as complicated as we make it, it comes down to being very simple. A joyful experience, a meaningful experience, is is so simple and intuitive, but what leads to it is so complex and so nuanced, and so we really need to look more into that and understand, what the essence of that is. A good friend of mine and colleague had just finished a book called um, Riveted. It's a cognitive science behind how people are riveted in entertainment and museums and video games, and he really kind of looks at the whole basis of how we get riveted by something. It's fascinating. I usually know what and how to get riveted, but never did I learn until I just finished reading his book about why we are riveted. And there's so much going on, and it's amazing. Um,
Well, hopefully, a lot of the other presentations will be riveting for you as well as an audience member. But I'm looking forward to hearing your talk in October and excited to have you out here.
well, can you give me some advice as far as the conference, in what would be valuable to your audience? What aspect do you think would be riveting?
Well, I think to your point about creating brand experiences and kind of all those different components that they should be considering is certainly something that is always a core theme throughout the conference. And I think that a lot of the different industries that you talk about, there's always something unique to take from each of them, regardless of what field or vertical people are coming from. So I think that'll be really exciting to see.
Okay, cool. And I'm very
Absolutely.
excited about being Portland. Portland is one of my favorite cities. I really think it's the future of creative communities and the creative economy, and the way it's been able to find a unique place in the world and set its own tone and personality and its level of participation and creativity. So I'm very excited to be out there, especially during Design Week. And
Absolutely.
hopefully I can find more excuses to visit and to interact and collaborate with people in Portland.
Yes. Well, we're looking forward to having you out here, and I look forward to seeing you in a few months.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.